Hello everyone, Arya here, Pop here. Thank you so much for joining me once again as we take a dive deep into the question of whether or not the worst monsters are no longer hiding in the dark, but in the light of the technology beaming right into our faces. Today's case is one that many of you suggested on our Discord server, and it's one that I was already familiar with and one that I think most of you were as well, as it made quite a lot of news when it happened fairly recently, as this was another horrific social media based crime that took place not too long ago. Today we are looking at the case of Janae Gagnier, aka Miss Mercedes Moore, who was a social media influencer, an entrepreneur, and a beloved family member. On August 29th, 2021, Janae's father, Mark Gagnier, was contacted by his younger daughter, London, who was panic-stricken, saying Janae's friends had told her that they hadn't heard from Janae and she hadn't posted on her Instagram stories in a few days, an unusual behavior for someone whose income relied on consistent posting on several platforms. When Janae wasn't responding to her father's phone calls, he at first suspected that she was sleeping in late. But when Mark arrived at his daughter's home with his girlfriend, Janae's front door was locked and he saw her car in the garage. That's when he knew something was wrong, and that was when he decided to kick her door down. Mark found his daughter Janae at the bottom of the stairs, curled up in a ball, only partially clothed. He wanted to cover his daughter's body, so his girlfriend went upstairs to grab something, and that's where she found 34-year-old Kevin Accorto from Wellington, Florida, lying in Janae's bed with a knife in his chest. He was still breathing. Investigators say Accorto stabbed himself multiple times. At this point, I've obviously covered a lot, perhaps far too many true crime cases, but one thing that I don't think I can ever imagine is, being someone to walk into a crime scene like that, or any crime scene, but especially also a crime scene involving someone, a family member, someone you love. It's truly, I think, one of those like surreal feelings that you just can't imagine. I obviously just feel for Janae's father. Janae's father entered the bedroom and said it looked as though Accorto had cut himself and bled all over the apartment for 2 days. There was blood everywhere. In the kitchen, the bathroom, freezer, droplets, puddles. Mark recalls that Accorto was gurgling and jerking and stuff. I screamed, "What the fuck did you do?" And that's when I saw the writing. Accorto had written in Janae's lipstick on the walls. Janae led me to think she cared about me but wore another man's ring, possibly referring to a post where she showed off a ring her boyfriend had gifted her. Other messages read, "I should have stayed in Florida. I wish I'd never met her." Also reportedly written on the walls, "I wish I never loved her." But one message that people found potentially illuminating read, "I was used for money." The word money was underlined. The Fort Bend County medical examiner ruled Janae's cause of death as strangulation and traumatic concussion. I think obviously with the rise of social media and influencer culture, and kind of, how that relationship between influencer and fan has become a lot more blurred because of technology, the idea of a parasocial relationship where the people who watch you, who follow you, believe they're actually your friend because you let them have glimpses of your life. It is potentially so dangerous. And it is dangerous, not even potentially. Janae is tragically not the first influencer to have had horrible things happen to them because of fans that crossed many lines into very dark places. Obviously, even myself, I certainly have nowhere near the following as Janae, but obviously being on BuzzFeed, I've had the majority of people, who connect with me on Instagram, on Twitter, on Twitch, they're wonderful, but I won't lie, I've certainly also received my fair share of unsettling messages. To the point where I don't even want to talk too much more about it. I guess my point is the fact that it happened to me on the scale I'm at, it's tragically unsurprising that someone with a following the size of Janae's, that these type of terrible things can happen. Janae Gagnier was a very outgoing person, the life of the party, and it showed on her social media posts. She had humorous TikToks and would karaoke on Instagram Live. She was the kind of woman who would pose for provocative photos and then break out laughing saying, "Girl, I'm over it." let's go take a shot. She was also widely popular in her hometown Houston, where she had lived for the past 10 years. Janae was known to be mobbed wherever she went by people who recognized her from Miss Mercedes Moore's social media content. Her brand name, Mercedes Moore, was Janae's social media alter ego, a voluptuous model with over 2 million followers who partied with Drake and had big name sponsors like Fashion Nova. Behind the persona Miss Mercedes Moore was a young woman who had loving relationships with her parents and her younger half-sister, London, who adored her. Janae is described as always having had an entrepreneurial spirit. When she was just 12 years old, she used her father's garage as a salon to charge $60 for hair braiding. Her father, Mark, says she always loved fashion and she always loved money. Janae's parents were divorced and she grew up bouncing between her father's home in LA and her mother's home in Texas. They both had a hard time disciplining her. She attended multiple high schools and sometimes got in fights with other women. After her high school years, she attended school to become a dental assistant, but decided to change her vocation and moved to Las Vegas with a boyfriend, where she danced professionally at strip clubs under the name Mercedes Moore. Her entertainment name, Mercedes, connoted luxury, and Moore referenced in her mother's words that she always wanted more. Her parents at first disapproved of her profession, but came around because they couldn't deny the amount of money she was making, somewhere between $4,000 to $5,000 each weekend. Janae was more than able to dance her way through her bills and was strategically able to network in order to build her following and achieve her goal to become a full-time influencer. When she began dancing in Houston, she met celebrities like Drake, who dedicated his latest album, Certified Lover Boy, to Miss Mercedes Moore. Janae's half-sister London says, "I think the reason why so many people loved her in the industry was the fact that they met her and she didn't treat them any different. She would give them attitude if need be, and she didn't gas them up because it was Drake, because it was Travis Scott, because it was Offset. She didn't care about any of that." Near the time of her death, she had planned on debuting a leggings line and a hair extensions line. She was also making rounds as a motivational speaker and was about to move into a new house in Houston with her boyfriend. Her father says that a few years ago, when she was living in New Orleans, a fan doxed her and released her home address, persuading her to move. She had been cautious ever since. It is still unclear to investigators how Accorto entered her home or how he found her. No sign of forced entry suggests that the attacker and victim knew each other, as well as the "I was used for money" message. But so far, investigators have found no relation between the murderer and the victim. London believes there is no sign of a forced entry because Accorto attacked her as she was coming out of her car, which she typically parked on the street. People online like to suggest that she was an escort or sugar baby, but her family insists that she was doing fine financially and had no need to have a relationship with anyone in that manner. It is also pointed out that even if she did gather income in that way, she would have top-tier clients, celebrities, not someone like Accorto. Investigation into what led the murder-suicide is still ongoing. It is known that Janae would accept gifts and cash from her subscribers on OnlyFans. Some of these gifts would be delivered to her home. Her father suspects that this is how Accorto knew her address. Perhaps Accorto maniacally put together clues from her posts. Even though she was cautious of not giving away personal information or hints of her location in her content, some posts included her apartment door in the background with the address blurred out. This murder-suicide has left the influencer community shocked and nervous for their own safety, watching their backs even more than before. Kayla G, a fellow influencer and friend of Janae, comments, "That's all we've been talking about. What can they do to do more? Be safer. I'm preaching to influencers now. Whenever you make stories on Instagram, save them and post them later. Post them when you're not there. If you go out of the country, save all your stuff when you get back." I tell them not to be flashy, but of course they are flashy. That's why they are who they are. Again, this is another case where it's fairly recent, so more information will probably come out, and I hope that a degree of justice for Janae can be found. And of course, I want to thank you for watching this video and always being here with me as I dive into these cases, because it's always a lot easier to walk in the dark when you have, some people with you. So I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. And as always, if you have a case you'd like me to cover in a future video, just slide into my DMs, shoot me a message. But either way, once again, thank you for watching and stay safe online.